Jane Velez Mitchell here with Unchained TV. We have breaking news. The gentleman you see in the lower center, Curtis Vollmar, has just been found guilty, not once but twice, guilty of disorderly conduct, guilty of trespass. But this was not a jury trial. This was a trial where a judge made the decision. So we have Wayne Shung, a co-founder of Direct Action Everywhere, who's going to be joining us. But first, we want to go straight out to the man of the hour. And I'm not talking about the judge. I'm talking about Curtis Vollmar. You see him here in court just moments ago. And there is the prosecution, if looks could kill, right? And there it is, Curtis waiting for that moment. There's his attorney, Mary Corcoran. There he is. The moment the verdict came down, you were found guilty. What ran through you? Curtis, what was that like?
Well, I was not shocked. It's definitely something that we were expecting, and we realized that there was a high likelihood of that happening. I will admit I was a little bit disappointed. I got to come back to Beaver again. But that is the silver lining in all of this, is that this story is going to continue. The story is going to continue. Seems like a never-ending thing here with our organization and in Utah and Beaver County specifically. So we're going to have basically this whole thing is going to be done all over again. I was talking with Almira Tanner, the lead organizer for Direct Action Everywhere. We're actually on this tour right now, hitting 11 cities across the West, doing a tour about the right to rescue and promoting the conference that's happening in June. And she was like, yeah, this whole thing just felt like a prelim, like a freebie. And so that's the way I'm looking at it. And again, this also gives us more opportunity to talk about this. And there's going to be, probably another op-ed by me, maybe somebody else. There's going to be more coverage on this whenever that appeals trial happens again. So just more exposure for all of this. And I think the more conversations, the more we get this out into the universe, so to speak, the better.
But listen, you are talking to these two law enforcement officers. They are saying to you very clearly they don't want you there, and that they don't like what you're saying, and that is free speech. I mean, this was not a jury trial. This wasn't your peers. This was a judge standing there. So you say you're not shocked, but I am actually shocked. This is America. This is not Russia.
So this judge
that you can be arrested, that you can be charged for speaking your mind in a public place. I know there was some debate over who actually owned the park, and maybe a religious organization owned the park, but it is apparently maintained by the city of Beaver. It is a public park. You are on the public park. You're talking like an American citizen. You're arrested. You're charged. I mean, I want to ask Wayne Shung to jump in here. You're also a constitutional law professor. I mean, is the First Amendment dead?
This was quite possibly the most absurd verdict I've ever seen in my life. And I've seen some absurdities in the courtroom. Let's just be clear. Curtis was convicted of disorderly conduct, despite the fact today in evidence, the only things we heard in testimony were words like he was friendly, he was polite. The mayor of Berkeley himself said, honestly, when I saw them having a conversation, it seemed calm, and it didn't even appear there was a conflict. They were just having a discussion about where he could stand. And the standard for disorderly conduct is you have to prove one of two things beyond a reasonable doubt. One is someone caused alarm by blocking pedestrian traffic. There is no evidence presented whatsoever today that there was any alarm by anyone and that Curtis blocked any pedestrian traffic. Alternatively, that Curtis defied a lawful order by a law enforcement official. And the only law enforcement official who testified today said, in response to Mary Corcoran's question, did Curtis comply with the orders? Not only did he say yes, he said absolutely, immediately. Because the moment the law enforcement officer said, hey, can you move your tent from here to here, Curtis did it. And yet he is still convicted. He stands before you as a convicted criminal in the state of Utah. And I think what this shows you is that the movement for animal rights is rising. The mere existence of our belief system is considered threatening to the powers that be. And Curtis has been much more diplomatic than I will be. But what I will say is This is an egregious miscarriage of justice. This is a demonstration of the deep rot and corruption in our political system, whereby when all the evidence, they didn't even, not only did they not prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt, they didn't even submit any evidence of disorderly conduct. Trespass, at least there's an argument. But disorderly conduct, there was not even an iota of evidence presented in this courtroom at all. And my friend still stands convicted. And that's because the industry and the powers that be in Beaver County perceive Curtis Vollmar's mere speech, his mere belief system, as a threat. And that means not only Curtis, but all of us who carry this belief system, that animals are not just things for us to abuse, but living beings for us to care for. We are considered a threat too. But as you said, Jane, that is not American. Punishing people, criminalizing the mere existence of a belief system, that is something our founding fathers really, literally revolted against. And all of us should be standing behind Curtis and saying, he has a right to say what he wants to say. He has a right to believe what he wants to believe. He has a right to have compassion for animals as an American.
I mean, I find this a very shocking moment, having covered many, many trials myself. The only thing I'll say is that, is this a blow to free speech everywhere? And I just want to get some comments from our other panelists. Nathan Semmel, you are a former Manhattan Assistant District Attorney and a prominent defense attorney in New York. What is your reaction to the fact that he's convicted for having conversations with people in a public space?
Yeah, Jane, the only thing I think more absurd than this verdict is the absurdity of the prosecution itself. I mean, prosecutors have discretion as to whether they should bring charges against people or not. For the Utah District Attorney to believe that this was a just prosecution is beyond absurd. I mean, there's video evidence of Curtis doing nothing more than exercising his First Amendment right. I mean, this was our law, our constitutional laws, and Wayne is the expert on this, says that laws must be content neutral. And on video, you hear this officer talking about this is because of what Curtis was saying, because of why the activists were there. That's not a reason to make an arrest, particularly for disorderly conduct. As for the trespass, I mean, this is a public park. I know there's issues with regard to whether, there was a lease and whether the property is actually owned by the church. But there is a long history in this country about parks being our sort of town square. And when Curtis was confronted on video, he's on a sidewalk. He's not even in the park, really. This is really, it's a chilling day, really. I mean, I'm thankful there's an appellate process. From a procedural standpoint, this was a disaster. I don't understand why there wasn't a jury trial. I hear the judge didn't go to law school. I mean, we don't see these things here. So it's very unsettling.
I want to play a little bit of the incident, the inciting incident, as they would say, because I think it speaks for itself. And I'm wondering, on the other side, did this get played before the judge? Did the emperor have no clothes? Did everybody pretend like this didn't happen?
You have to have a permit.
Permit for a sidewalk?
Let me get my camera on too.
Sure.
Okay. You're not.
This is not a good look.
You're not to be spreading.
This is not a good look.
You're not supposed to be down here.
This is public property.
You're not to be down here doing this. Do you realize that your company caused a problem in our community?
Do you have anything relevant to say to me?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I've asked you to stop.
Okay, I'm on public property.
You need to stop.
Okay.
Go ahead.
You need to stop. You realize you're not wanted in this community and you've been asked to leave?
I don't care.
I know you don't care. That's the problem with your group. You just don't care about people or anybody. Do you understand? You've been asked to leave.
All of this for handing out some flyers. This is how much promotion.
All of this because your group has been a direct influence on shutting down Smithfield Foods. You don't realize that's the major employer in our county?
You don't think I know that?
There's a lot of people that have lost their jobs, and you come into this community and pour salt into the wounds of the people that have lost their jobs.
It's not the intent.
You need to well, I don't care what the intent is. What you're doing is causing a disturbance in the community.
I'm not trying to cause a disturbance. I'm just trying to have conversations with people.
You are.
And if people don't want to talk with me, I say thanks for your time and on with your day.
Okay. I'm going to stand right here and I'm going to tell people not to talk to you.
Then fine, do that. This is great content for us. Absolutely ridiculous. This is very anti-free speech.
Oh my God. I mean, I gotta go. Okay, we're gonna round robin it here. Carla Cabral, you're a DXC activist. You've been around. I would think that the ACLU and everybody would be on this bandwagon. Take it away, unmute and take it away.
Yeah, I mean, geez, I can feel my blood pressure rising. I don't even know where to begin with something like that. I mean, if this was truly a matter of Curtis being on private property, which seemed to kind of be that they were really holding to the idea that actually Curtis was on private property, not public property. Not once did we hear Officer Woolsey state that as a rebuttal to anything Curtis said. Clearly, it had nothing to do with whether it was public or private property. It was very clear that it was about the content. You could hear he even said he didn't care what the intent was. And as an activist, having done outreach, I wasn't there, but I can say that on every single occasion that I have gone out with Curtis and other activists from Direct Action Everywhere, when we've done outreach, it is always respectful. We simply ask if people would like information, and if they say no, then they go. It's to infer that there was some level of harassment, I find just completely egregious. And to think that there were witnesses who on the stand would state that there was some kind of harassment going on, I'm just beside myself with that.
I want to get to everybody else. Ellen Dent, you held vigils outside what has recently closed down, but it was a Smithfield facility here near downtown LA. You had a great relationship with the police. Some of them actually, expressed sympathy and went vegan. What is your reaction to basically he's been found guilty of trespass and disorderly conduct for doing essentially what you've been doing for years?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we have rights as people in the United States of America, and that police officer and the others involved are trying to take those rights away from Curtis. And he knows he has those rights, just like I knew I had those rights standing outside of their largest facility in the Southwest, that thankfully is shutting down, although it is moving. So it's kind of bittersweet. But I knew that too. And I had an armed guard push me, in front of the gate at, that location at that plant. And I, called the cops. They came down and let that armed guard know that he can't do that. And that he was lucky that I wasn't pressing charges against him, because I had every right to stand exactly where I was on public property, just like Curtis was.
Well, I want to go to Mick Davudian. You are a philanthropist. You've supported these groups. What is your reaction as an American citizen, as somebody who, kind of sees the big picture here?
I'm equally as shocked, honestly. I was not expecting, certainly not this quickly. I thought maybe the judge would at least pretend to be interested in what really happened. Now, we did not see what happened in court. I would love to hear from Wayne or maybe from Curtis exactly what the judge said, what his rationale was. Did he give his thoughts on it before saying he's guilty, or did he just come out and say guilty? And we all know, laws, a lot of laws are not just, and laws have to change in many respects, but some laws are in fact fair and just. Here's one example: freedom of speech, which we value immensely here in the US. I grew up in Iran as a kid. This kind of court, Kangaroo court, is what happens in places like Iran, not in the US.
Oh, you're making absolutely right on point, that this is the kind of thing that we as Americans and the American government criticize when we see it happening. For example, in Russia, where there's a journalist being held on phony charges in Russia right now. Wayne and Curtis, what was said in court? Was that video, that highly incriminating video? And by the way, we invite any of the law enforcement officers on. We invite Smithfield on anytime. We would love to dialogue with you. But what happened in court? Was that played?
So no, the video was not played. Everything went from 9 o'clock. Everything was over, started at 9. Everything was done before noon. So both parties waived opening statements. The opposition, or Leo Canal, he tried to get the fact that the church was like private, or the park was church property or private property, like in to the court system, like officially beforehand, like a pretrial motion. They went back and forth over that. He ended up not getting it right away, but they ended up admitting it later. But basically what happened was there was 4 witnesses that were called up. Lance Smith, who is the kind of head honcho of the LDS church in Beaver and in the surrounding areas. Brent Blackner, who is a high-ranking LDS member in the area. And this was someone that had a lot of control over the Pioneer Day celebration, which is this religious celebration. I didn't know it at the time. I had no idea that Pioneer Day in Utah was this religious thing. I just thought it was just some, festival or whatever. But anyway, so Brent Blackner, who was a high-ranking LDS official in the area that was in charge of events and scheduling and all that. Matt Robinson, who was the mayor, who's also a member of the LDS church, who also works for Smithfield, testified. And then one of the officers, Officer Skeena, who was one of the first on the scene, not featured in the audit video, but I had personal interaction with him. And he's on city council, so he's friends with the mayor. So you have, we have not put the LDS church on blast here, and I'm not doing that, but there appears to be, not only Smithfield in the city council and city officials, but I think the LDS church has some explaining to do in all of this as well.
Well, let me say I also invite the LDS Church on. Anybody who was mentioned as appearing in court, or really anybody who wants to comment on this, we would love to dialogue. Wayne Shung, I have to play your reaction immediately after the verdict from your car, because that was also very, it gave me the chills. So let's listen to what Wayne and watch what Wayne says, and then we're going to talk about this. This is minutes after the verdict, or the "you're guilty" judgment by the judge.
I'm sat outside of this park. Here's the park. You can see some monuments and stuff. I'll go show you in just a second. But back in July 2022, my friend Curtis was out here just doing some outreach, handing out some leaflets, talking to people. It's a park that's open to the public. You'll see in a minute. It's run and operated by the city of Beaver. He was told he needed to leave because he wasn't welcome here. He was told by police officers that he shouldn't be talking to people because people don't like what he's saying about Smithfield. And then he was charged with initially disorderly conduct, and by the time we got to trial, also trespass. And we just had a trial that was the shortest trial of my life, a couple hours, and he was convicted on both counts. So the sentence, thankfully, was not incarceration. They just fined him. And also, because this is what's called a justice court proceeding, he actually has an opportunity to appeal and redo the entire process, because Utah has this 2-stage process where you initially have a trial, often before a non-lawyer judge. Is it really? I think that pickup's the guy behind it. There's a guy with a laptop. There's a guy with a laptop behind us just watching us. We're going to get ticketed. This is public parking. I think you're fine parking. We'll find out if we get arrested for being in too. So I think we got a cop behind us. A guy in a pickup truck is following us with a laptop. So who knows? If I'm arrested, avenge me. Just kidding. We don't believe in vengeance. No. If I'm arrested, make sure somebody knows.
Oh my gosh, you're going back to the park where all this happened. And I mean, I don't have any words. Wayne, explain to us what was happening there and what the implications of that are.
Well, I mean, my thought is if leafleting is a crime, then live streaming must be a capital offense in Beaver, Utah. But I just want to be clear about what happened in court because Mick asked, did the judge offer an explanation? There is no explanation. And to be blunt, the prosecution did not even put up a pretext of offering proof beyond a reasonable doubt. There could be an argument that a conviction was legitimate if the prosecution actually put together some evidence. But they called 4 witnesses, none of whom testified about the elements of the offenses at issue in this case. And when they did testify about the elements, like, for example, what sorts of conduct that Curtis might have been involved in that were disorderly, they said the opposite. Literally, the state's witnesses said he was friendly, he was polite, he was calm. It didn't even feel like a disagreement. Now he's convicted of disorderly conduct. And it's fair to compare what happened today in Utah to some of these kangaroo courts we see around the world, where dictatorships convict people at 100% rate, and just by virtue of being accused, you're convicted because there was not even a sliver of evidence, especially of disorderly conduct. They alleged the opposite in court, and yet this guy's still convicted, and that's deeply disturbing with our criminal justice system. So the silver lining of this is, and again, I think Curtis made this point earlier, and I just want to emphasize it because it's a beautiful and powerful point. The silver lining of this is that we still have some free speech rights. I'm still here, actually inside of McDonald's, of all places, because the Wi-Fi is good here, and I'm in the middle of southern Utah. This is the best place I could find. But we still have some free speech rights. And as long as we talk about this case and we mobilize behind this case, I believe there are good people in the LDS Church. I think there are good people in the state of Utah. I think there are good people on a jury, even in Beaver County, who will see the facts when they're actually presented, not as a prosecution or as biased judges or elected officials perceive them, but as they actually unfolded on that day in July 2022. And those unbiased jurors will ultimately conclude that in this country, we do believe in free speech. In this country, we do believe the prosecution has to prove things beyond a reasonable doubt. You can't convict people just because someone alleges someone committed a crime. And even though all the facts that come out, again, I've been in so many court cases. I've seen so many trials in my lifetime. I've never seen a trial where there is not even a sliver of evidence, where the prosecution and judge don't even put up a pretext. It would be one thing if they kind of pretended there's some evidence, but they didn't even pretend there was evidence of disorderly conduct. And yet my friend still stands convicted of that crime. And again, the silver lining is when we start talking about this, and there is an active lawsuit, and that might be one of the reasons Curtis was convicted today, because they know there's going to be accountability. In federal court in Salt Lake City, there is an active civil lawsuit against the county of Beaver for violating people's First Amendment rights. There is going to be accountability, I think, in the long term. And maybe more important than accountability in the courtroom is accountability in the court of public opinion. And as more people hear about what's happened to Curtis, they're going to say, you know what? If not for the grace of God, that could be me. If a powerful corporation can convict someone of a crime merely for speaking, merely because of the sentiments they hold in their heart and in their mind, they could do that to me too. Maybe the next week it's going to be a labor concern. I work for Smithfield, and I have a concern because they're not paying me my minimum wage. It could be an environmental concern. Maybe I'm a parent in a community next door, and Smithfield's emanating feces and water and chemicals and disease and spraying it into the neighborhood schoolyards and playgrounds. But whoever you are, if you are a little guy out there, you should look at a case like this and you should say, we need to fight together. We need to stand up for this guy, because if we don't stand up for him, it's going to be us next.
So well said. Now, to add to all the irony here, Curtis was there because the person you just heard from, Wayne Shung, and his friend Paul Picklesheimer were on trial. For going into the Smithfield pig factory farm, which is arguably, reportedly, either the or one of the biggest pig factory farms in the world, and documenting everything that they saw, called Operation Death Star. That's the name they gave to the video, a high-tech 360 video, so nobody could accuse them of taking anything out of context. And essentially, Wayne, who just left but gave us some really good information, was put on trial for that. Now, let's take a quick look at what Wayne's alleged crimes were. Again, he himself arranged the videotape of it, and then it was put into the New York Times in a link in the article. So DXC, Direct Action Everywhere, is proactively videotaping their alleged crimes, which they call open rescue, rescuing animals from horrific conditions. But they were charged, criminally charged. A jury ultimately found Wayne and Paul not guilty. Let's watch and then talk about that, because that's a big part of the puzzle here.
So Circle 4 is a farm that processes and kills 1.2 million pigs every year.
We're about to head into Circle 4. This is the heart of evil. You can already hear the screams of the other pigs inside. They're cramped, they're suffering, and we're going to try and expose what's actually happening inside. You guys ready to go? Mm-hmm. Let's put our lights on.
And that's not even the half of it. Wayne was put on trial for rescuing 2 pigs along with Paul and piglets, sick piglets. And here is his closing argument, where a jury found him not guilty. And we're going to talk on the other side about the difference between a jury hearing testimony and what happened today when Curtis Vollmar was found guilty, a judge making the decision.
And I wish I could tell you the full story of what happened. We were on very direct orders to talk only about, the night of March 7th, 2017, only about 2 piglets. But it's an interesting thing hearing someone as compelling as Vaughn, and he's a very compelling speaker, talk about what's in your heart in a way that you know is not true. And it's not. And honestly, the best way to explain it is the way Rick explained it, that there's a big difference between stealing an animal and trying to help someone who needs some help. And I think at the end of this closing argument, we'll be convinced, hopefully, that that's all we're trying to do. But I did want to go back to where we started. In our opening statement, or I should say my opening statement, not our opening statement, that we talked about how there were no piglets taken from gestation farm. And we don't have to worry about that. Count 1 is done. We're not talking about gestation buildings. The prosecution's conceded, and the judge ruled that we don't have material of that charge. But these 2 pieces are still very important. And the first piece is that we didn't have any purpose to take anything of value from Smithfield. We were there to document conditions and save lives.
And that resonated with the jury. And the jury from the same area, I mean, this is a rural area in Utah, but it was the people making the decision. Those jurors found Wayne and Paul not guilty. So I really want to talk to everybody about the difference between jurors hearing something and a judge making a decision, which, who are we going to start with? Let's start with Curtis.
Yeah, so I do want to note, I think there's a big difference between Beaver County and Washington County, St. George, where the trial was. I think that Smithfield has a lot higher level of influence in Beaver than they do in St. George. I mean, 1 in 4 people that live in Beaver work or have worked for Smithfield Foods, and that came out in a I believe it was the Salt Lake Tribune article from a couple of years ago. So that's bias level, I would say, is a lot higher in Beaver. Now, that's not to say that I think would definitely have a better shot at a jury trial in Beaver than this one judge. There might have been at least 2, 3, maybe half of the jury would have been like, hey, look, I don't agree with the guy. My uncle used to work for Smithfield, and I eat bacon and I like pork, but we have a right to say things even if we disagree with them. That's I have to believe that kind of conversation would have went on in a deliberation room. But unfortunately, that is not a thing. And I'm for this justice court that just happened. It was just the judge making a decision.
Are you going to go back and demand a jury trial now?
Well, so that's what I was just about to say. I don't believe that the appeals that when we don't go to the appeals court next. Next, it's the district court, which is actually the same place, but just a different judge. And I don't believe that we get a jury for that either. I'm not sure, Wayne, if you know, if you're with Jeremy, if he was able to find that out, or if we were able to talk to Mary, our lawyer. But I don't believe that we get a jury for the next step of this, because the stakes were actually too low. Like, it was just a fine, there's no jail time, so that, like, we're not bringing a jury in for this. That's my understanding of it.
Wayne?
So there is a constitutional right, and Nathan could talk about this too, to a jury trial for any offenses that have a potential maximum sentence of 6 months or more. My understanding is the prosecution isn't undertaking some shenanigans to try and avoid a jury trial by claiming, oh, we're not going to sentence someone to more than 6 months for an offense like this, even though theoretically I think it's possible. I'm not as experienced enough in Utah procedure to know for sure, but I do think the prosecution has done everything they can to not just suppress evidence of what actually happened at Circle 4 Farms when we did the investigation, what actually happened in July 2022, when Curtis was not only arrested, but threatened with violence. Again, the only threat of criminal action that happened on that day in July of 2022 was by the police against Curtis, not by Curtis against anyone else, because there are police officers who said things like, you will definitely be killed. You are going to be killed, right? These are the people facing threats. But the prosecution has done everything they can to not just evade any sort of transparency and accountability, but then turn the tables on the people pointing out the problems in the system, whether they're free speech problems or animal cruelty problems. And I'm confident that will continue to be the case, unfortunately. And one of the reasons the jury trial system is such an important system is because it avoids the regulatory capture that so often happens in law and politics. You have these elected officials who are all buddies with the big corporations. They get campaign contributions. They all go to the same parties. They all hang out in the same mansions and so on. And they all become friends. And oftentimes it's not even intentional misconduct. It's just you're naturally going to be biased towards the people you know well. And all the powerful multi people hang out and they start being biased towards each other. And the jury system is a way to avoid all of that and go right to the people. And I think it's so crucial in a democracy that we retain that basic civil right that we all have. I hope to God that Curtis gets that right. His First Amendment rights have already been denied. Let's hope his rights under the U.S. Constitution to a fair and impartial decision maker are not also undermined. And I'll certainly be assisting his legal team as much as possible in ensuring he gets that right, because he deserves it.
I just feel like this is a bigger story even than, and I say this as somebody who obviously our Unchained TV is a network to promote the plant-based lifestyle. Just like MSNBC has a point of view and Fox News has a point of view, we have a point of view, and that's fine. But to me, this is way beyond animal rights. This is a First Amendment issue. And I just want to go around the room, starting with Mick. You had said where you grew up in Iran that, you know, there are, I don't know if it's speciesist to say kangaroo courts, but that we see it today in Russia. There is a reporter, I believe, for the Wall Street Journal who's just been locked up. And this happens regularly where it's just trumped up charges. What we don't expect that in the United States of America, which is founded on the notion of free speech. You know, give me liberty or give me death. My gosh. Do you think this is sort of a scary milestone, Mick?
I'm not sure about a milestone. I think this is, I think from what I understand, Utah has a very specific way of handling these cases. I may be wrong, but I would think if this was a case somewhere else, he might have had the option to go to a jury trial. And your initial question a few minutes ago was, what's the real big difference? And I think Wayne already spoke to that to some degree. The difference in my mind is here in America, we have jury of our peers, and they, in essence, you know, can be partial in their own mind, but they cannot be bought and paid for it. Whereas in my mind, I really have much less trust in a judge, especially a judge that is on a bench for a lifetime term, who can be easily bought and paid for. And we know this happens all the time.
Yes,
without saying anything about this particular judge, I'm just saying in general, judges can be bought and paid for. So that's the big difference in my mind. I feel much more comfortable with a jury of our own peer.
And yes, and I just have to clarify that we're not suggesting that anything illegal on the part of the judge. I mean, I understand your point, but I just want to make that clear. So there is a lawsuit that you have filed, Curtis, and I've heard your analysis that you feel this entire criminal charge is really a pretext for giving the law enforcement community that you're suing because of the same incident more leverage to win their lawsuit. Can you explain that briefly, and then we'll get Nathan and Carla's response to that?
Yeah, I think that, if they win this criminal matter, this gives them a little more leverage or a little more breathing room in the civil matter. In the civil matter, they can say, "Oh, he was actually charged in that. He was actually convicted of trespassing and disorderly conduct. So therefore, we had to do certain things to get him out of there because he was unruly." And so that's why I think they're fighting this so hard. I also believe that they're probably feeling very, for lack of a better term, salty after losing the Smithfield trial. I mean, you saw what they did with the state legislature. Von Christensen, the prosecutor over the Smithfield trial, ran right to the state legislature, which with his buddy, I can't remember the name of the representative, but they got this House bill passed within like a month that makes it not an admissible defense to rescue an animal and say that you did this because they were sick, injured, or in bad shape. Therefore negating the whole jury process, or saying the jury did a bad job and came to a wrong conclusion. So yeah, I think that all of these things are like they need a victory. They need they can't have these animal rights people coming in here. They already won this Smithfield trial. They already made us look bad. We got to do something here, and I'm that guy.
But that's not how it's supposed to work. Nathan Semmel, you're a former assistant district attorney. Yeah, they lost. The prosecution lost in court in another county, right? But that doesn't mean that then you use the criminal justice system as a way to even the score.
Yeah, I mean, in the ideal world, in a reasonable world, you're right. But I think the evidence here is pretty clear that this was retaliatory. And there's been mention of this federal civil rights lawsuit brought by Curtis and other DXC activists. One thing that hasn't been mentioned here is that when Curtis was originally cited, it's my understanding that he was only cited for disorderly conduct, which is just an infraction. It's not a criminal charge. It would be like, sleeping on a park bench or being in the park too late or something like that. A very, very minor offense, wrong, but not something that would label him a criminal if convicted. But here, when the activists filed their federal lawsuit, that's when the prosecution added the criminal trespass charge. So to suggest that this is not retaliatory just seems to be belied by the evidence. And in that federal lawsuit, you had a federal judge, unlike this judge, who didn't even go to law school. You have a federal judge who found that the rights of Curtis and the activists were violated. The First Amendment right was violated by the officers. And despite that, the prosecution is still going forward with this case. So when you have a federal judge telling you this is a really unsavory prosecution, the police acted improperly and violated people's rights to still go forward with the case, there's clearly an agenda here. And I think they added the charge as retaliation. I think they added the charge to try to get out from under this civil suit.
I want to go to Carla Cabral. Is there a way to bring in, you hear about the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, defending people who we normally would find abominable, but just defending them because they defend free speech. We've heard that, obviously, that issue come up many times, and they say, well, yes, of course, we find whatever hateful group is saying terrible, but we defend their right to say it, because if we prevent them from saying it, then we prevent good people from saying things that they want to say. Is there, do you think, a chance to get like the ACLU or one of these similar groups involved in this?
Well, I certainly think that would be wonderful if we could get somebody like that involved. My concern there is that it seems to me that the Beaver County officers and the justice system over there, they know that this is a violation of free speech. And that's why they have the disorderly conduct, the trespass. I think that they know that they want to steer clear of that and try and make sure that they're pushing the agenda that this is only about the fact that they were on private property and that they were harassing people. Right. So, we don't care what they were talking about. This isn't what that's about at all, even though I personally feel like the video evidence shows clearly that that's not true. But I think that's why they're pushing so hard on the idea that it was about disorderly conduct. And I would actually ask Curtis.
I'd like to say, and just continue afterwards, that Curtis was saying in court, the witnesses for the prosecution were saying that he was polite. They weren't backing up the disorderly conduct.
Well, that's exactly what I was just going to do is ask Curtis, because it was my understanding that the witnesses were supposed to be there to back up this idea that there was disorderly conduct, that there was harassment, that I thought I had heard one witness was going to state that they felt like they were pushed into, that they wanted them to sign the petition. And Curtis, were you actually even out there getting signatures, or were you alone just doing the flyers?
Yeah. So Carla, what you were just talking about was those snippets of what you were just saying was from the preliminary injunction hearing that happened back in October and the civil matter. Today in court, in the criminal matter, the last, I think 3 of the 4, maybe all of them, said at least something along the lines of they were calm. There was never any shouting or anything of that nature. They act in a composed manner, and which is exactly the opposite of disorderly conduct. Obviously I'm biased here, but today in court, there was not a shred of evidence, not anything about disorderly conduct from me or anyone, not anything. And the trespass stuff, maybe that's up for debate. But still, even that wasn't.
I gotta jump in here.
Sure.
So these witnesses get on the stand. They say, "Oh no, he was friendly. He was polite." They're witnesses to the prosecution that's trying to prove you committed disorderly conduct. Does the judge say anything about that, or does he just go, "You're guilty of disorderly conduct," even though the witnesses for the prosecution testify that you were polite? Is there any acknowledgement? I mean, or are we living in this Orwellian world where it's like,
No. He took about 5 seconds to deliberate.
So it was just like slam, bam, thank you, ma'am. That's it.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. Well, I'd like to get everybody's reaction to that, starting with Ellen Dent.
I think the judge already had their mind made up before they went into the courtroom. And, this is a county that is run and paid for by Smithfield, like Deb Thompson said. 25% of their population, which is, from what I looked up, about 7,000 people worked for Smithfield. So, I mean, this is, not a fair place for him to have any sort of trial, whether it's by the judge or probably even a jury, I would venture to say. So that's why they moved the case with Wade Chung and Paul Picklesheimer out of that county. So I think that may be the only way he's going to really get a fair shake, that Curtis will get a fair shake, in trial in any county.
Well, I want to ask, what's going to happen next? If you
there was a really good comment that someone just put in there, and I think that's probably likely. They said, someone said, Utah lawyer here
Yes.
said that like both sides are probably keeping their cards, close to their chest because they know they get a free do-over, and that's where everything will come out. So,
well, what is that do-over?
So you get a de novo appeal, which it's basically a free do-over. It's another shot at this with another judge.
Are you going to do that?
Yeah, obviously.
Okay, well, I don't know. You had mentioned before that you thought, well, it's the same county. Another judge might be just as biased. We're not going to get a jury. So,
I mean, we're gonna try to, maybe we'll file a motion to try to get it in a different county. But either way, I think that the higher up we go, if we don't win that one and we go to appeals court, in Salt Lake City, we'll probably have a better shot there than we did at the next one. So I think that the higher up that we go on this, the better shot we'll have at winning. And again, the more that this is in the media, I mean, the media has been great in Utah for not only this, but also Wayne and Paul's thing since the beginning of it in 2017. St. George News and the Salt Lake Tribune have been very favorable to us. So, again, that's a silver lining. I'm just happy that this is we're having these conversations. Yeah. The media is reporting on it, and the officials there in Beaver County are not looking great.
You're looking at the Salt Lake Tribune paper. They actually published Curtis, who you just heard from, the defendant in this case, who was just found guilty. They had published very recently his op-ed asking, is free speech dead in rural Utah? And I just want to go to Mick to that. I mean, the law of unintended consequences. You set something in motion, even though it appears that this round was lost in the sense that Curtis was convicted. It's not the end game yet, right, Mick?
Absolutely. And to answer the question of the headline, I would never say it's dead. There's no such thing as dead when it comes to law. Law will change, and in the future it might change anyway. But it certainly seems to be in a coma right now. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, and you wanted to say something, Carla?
But just that I think I agree with the idea that on some level it's actually very good to continue to be able to speak about this. And I think that more people need to be writing op-eds, more people need to be speaking up, and the more press and the more this gets out there, the more likely we are, to your point, to get organizations like the ACLU and other free speech organizations involved to be working with us, so that no matter what it is that you're fighting for, that you're able to state your opinion freely and without being worried that you're going to have a situation like this arise.
And Jane, can I jump in for a sec?
Yes,
I really hope DXC has a great ability to make things go viral. I really hope DXC starts a petition to have ACLU take this on.
I agree. And speaking of viral, I want to point out that the video, which honestly, I'm addicted to this video. I can't stop watching it because I'm sorry, I shouldn't say this, but I find it very funny because it just betrays a complete lack of understanding of what the role of law enforcement is. You're not a politician who is making arguments because you're running for city council or for state legislature or for the mayor's office. You're supposed to blindly follow the letter of the law and arrest people who are violating the law, not advocate for a particular position. I understand that this is the reason why Wayne, who was ultimately found not guilty, had his case moved. It was a change of venue to a more, well, let's say a fairer community, which was not so tied to the industry. And so the funny part about this, and I shouldn't say funny, but the interesting part about this is that this video actually may have very well been the reason why Wayne Shung and Paul Picklesheimer were found not guilty of taking the two pigs out of the Smithfield factory farm, because the behavior of this particular law enforcement officer was so egregious that they gave the defense a change of venue. Let's hear it again for a little bit, not the whole thing, but although I'd love to play the whole thing again.
You have to have a permit.
Permit for a sidewalk?
Let me get my camera on too.
Sure.
Okay. You're not to
This is not a good look.
You're not to be spreading.
This is not a good look.
You're not supposed to be down here.
This is public property.
You're not to be down here doing this. Do you realize that your company caused a problem in our community?
Do you have anything relevant to say to me?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I've asked you to stop.
Okay, I'm on public property.
You need to stop.
Okay.
Go ahead. You need to stop. You realize you're not wanted in this community and you've been asked to leave?
I don't care.
I know you don't care. That's the problem with your group. You just don't care about people or anybody. Do you understand? You've been asked to leave.
All of this for handing out some flyers. This is how much promotion.
All of this because your group has been a direct influence on shutting down Smithfield Foods. You don't realize that's the major employer in our county?
You don't think I know that?
There's a lot of people that have lost their jobs, and you come into this community and pour salt into the wounds of the people that have lost their jobs.
It's not the intent.
You need to well, I don't care what the intent is. What you're doing is causing a disturbance in the community.
I'm not trying to cause a disturbance. I'm just trying to have conversations with people.
You are.
And if people don't want to talk with me, I say thanks for your time and on with your day.
Okay. I'm going to stand right here and I'm going to tell people not to talk to you.
Then fine, do that. This is great content for us. Absolutely ridiculous. This is very anti-free speech.
I mean, my God, just use another issue. What if in the time where women suffragettes did not have the right to vote, and indeed this did happen, they were arrested? And what if a police officer said to a woman, don't you know that if you take a job, you're taking it away from a man? Don't you realize if you take a job, young lady, that then a man won't be able to have a job? I mean, if you apply the same logic to any other social justice issue, people would be running in the streets outraged, Ellen Dent.
Yeah, it's completely ridiculous. The only person who's being harassed is Curtis and the other activists that were there. And they just expect him just to leave. Like, he doesn't know that he has rights. And they're probably used to people not questioning law enforcement. So I can't believe it's just gotten to this point. I hope that we're able to keep this going, get this as far out as possible. Everybody shares this to let other people know that we do have rights. Unlike other animals, human beings have the right to stand on public property and talk about whatever they want. So I hope that this keeps getting pushed forward and gets to Salt Lake City. And I hope you win, Curtis. Thanks for being so brave.
And I want to ask Curtis, first of all, we do invite that officer or any of the officers involved in this, along with anybody who wants to be on, talk about it, the LDS Church, Smithfield Foods, anybody who wants, we would invite them on, and we'd love to dialogue with you. We'll have another panel discussion. Seriously, come on. But what happened to that officer? Was he disciplined as a result of that? Because I know that my understanding is they were using that video as not only did it go viral, getting something like 2.7 million views on audit to audit, but it also apparently was used as a training video of what not to do.
Yeah. So when I was at the Smithfield trial in October in St. George, I was the police liaison for the first few days. Well, I was, given the role by our group to be police liaison for the time there. And kind of after the second day, the police realized that, we weren't going to be causing any problems, and we were just there to support Wayne and Paul, and the role wasn't really needed. But the first couple of days, I was interacting with the police on a fairly regular basis, and almost immediately, day one, Monday, the officer that I was interfacing with says, "I recognize you." I said, "Okay." It's like, yeah, the police video the audit video, and I was like, oh yeah. She's like, yeah, it's a great time. And he says, that video has been used in our department to show people what not to do, show the officers what not to do. So yeah, that's pretty funny. And apparently that was expressed to Mary Corporan as well. She was told that as well.
Was he disciplined? I mean, did he get a lecture? What happened? Nothing? I mean,
I don't believe so. Not to my knowledge.
Oh, wow. And somebody else has joined us. I don't know who you are, but I'd love to find out. I know we had asked various people because we weren't sure when the verdict was coming in. But will you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Allie. I'm with DXE. I was also with Curtis doing outreach when the whole incident occurred. And so Carla asked me to join if I had time today. And yeah, so I went out and did outreach, Beaver on Pioneer Day. And I was one of the first to leave the scene, but yeah, I also experienced some of the harassment that Curtis did as well. But yeah, not to the same extent, but yeah, I was there with them and a few others.
So
Allie, you should talk about it. Like, I think Allie got worse than what I did, and Allie probably would have gotten, cited or charged if Allie would have stuck around. But the former police chief or the sergeant there said some really not nice things to Allie. Yeah, Allie, I think you should share that story. It's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Cameron Noel, the sheriff there, I was just standing at a table. I had actually had some pretty good conversations, just passing out flyers. And at the time I wasn't even talking to anyone. I was standing there at a table in public on the street, near the sidewalk, at least I could say. And he just rushes up to me, the sheriff, and says, something to the effect of, like, you will be killed and I won't be around to stop them. You're on private property, and if you don't leave immediately, I will press charges. And so, yeah, I was just really shook up from that incident. And I felt scared because there was just so much anger that I felt expressed at me, and it just was so sudden. And and I felt like he came really close to me, and the kind of animosity that I felt without really any context. No one had approached me with that kind of hostility to that degree. And then it was just like suddenly like coming at me like that. And so that incident really shook me up, and I was just really anxious the rest of the time that I was there, and worried for Curtis too at one point, just trying to see like how he was and how everyone else was doing, but trying to stay away as much as I could.
I want to say, let me make sure I'm understanding you correctly. You're saying that you were having some good conversations with people, that you were having discussions, and that the people themselves that you were interacting with did not seem particularly threatened by you, and they did not threaten you. It was, you're saying, and again, we invite all these law enforcement officers on. There is a lawsuit. It is ongoing. Are you one of the plaintiffs in the lawsuit?
No, I'm not a named plaintiff in the lawsuit.
Mm-hmm. But you're saying that when you started to feel threatened was when the law enforcement started talking to you, and they said, you will be killed. That's your quote?
Yeah, something to the, basically, yeah, that's what they said. That's what Noel had said to me, something to that effect, at least. That's how I remembered it being expressed. And personally, I didn't have any, I had a lot of positive conversations. There was one person that yelled something like, I love pork, but it wasn't anything that I haven't heard before. But I had several people like willing to sign a petition to support what we were doing. And yeah, there was a lot of people that were willing to have several minute-long conversations, like at least a few people. So I wasn't feeling, personally, I didn't get any animosity from my individual conversations with people. It was just the police that I felt threatened by.
you know, what I've found in these communities, and as a reporter, I've, you know, worked in many different communities. I worked in Minneapolis. I traveled to Wisconsin. I traveled to Iowa. And so I was in communities that are not like citified. And I found that, you know, we can't stereotype people. We don't like to be stereotyped, and I don't stereotype people. You can find people who are very compassionate toward animals in an area where there's a big factory farm, you know, and you can find people right here in Los Angeles who are not compassionate to animals and who purport to be, you know, progressive. I think it's a very personal thing. And so it's when people make an assumption that they're speaking for this whole group. Okay, this law enforcement officer, according to what you're alleging, is making an assumption that he's protecting these people because he knows how they think. And you heard it right there on tape with the other officer saying, you know, basically, I'm speaking for this entire community. Well, the audacity and the hubris of that. Have you sat down and talked to every single one of those people and gotten their view on it? I mean, that is presumptuous, Mick Davudian.
Well, not only that, Jane, I mean, they are actually failing at the absolute basic duty that they have to the public. They are paid employees of the government, paid by our tax dollars. They have the requirement as part of their training to protect individuals. So if he really felt that these Curtis and the other activists there were possibly going to be hurt or accosted by the public, their job was to stand there and protect them.
Not say you're going to be killed and I'm not going to do anything about it.
Ridiculous.
Oh my God, this is absolutely just
the same
wild.
The same type of thing that was expressed to Allie by Cameron Noel, who was the sheriff. He's not the sheriff anymore. Another gentleman named Cody Black, who I had a brief interaction with there on that day, is now the sheriff. But there was another similar thing that was said after I had gotten after I'd been cited. The cops hung around, those two cops and another cop. There was like three or four of them that hung around, and we were just talking with them for about a half an hour. And the main guy in the video, the audit video, he says, "Don't go up to the races tonight," referring to the horse races. And this is, you can watch the video, you'll hear this. He says, "Don't go up to the races tonight. You'll definitely get killed up there." And he says, "Yeah, everyone's sober here, but up there they get a little liquor in them, and yeah, good luck." And I said, "Well, then you all will be there to protect us, right?" And then the other officer, he says something to the effect of, "Look, I've got drunk drivers and other things I need to deal with, and if I get calls about this stupid animal issue, I'm not going to be happy, and I'm going to take it out on you."
Oh my God, this is like a bad movie. I just can't, honestly, I mean, you think things don't shock you that much anymore, but I'm quite shocked by this. I cannot believe the flagrant violation. Now, a lot of this, as you're saying, is caught on tape. What's going to happen with your lawsuit? When is it coming up, and are all these issues going to be addressed?
The civil rights lawsuit, I don't know. I feel like we're just waiting. And now that this criminal matter had the outcome that it did, it'll probably be on hold for even longer because I'm going to appeal it, which means they're going to want to wait. I don't think there's going to be a ruling on the civil matter until the criminal matter is completely finalized. The judge she has every right to rule on it at any time, I believe, but I feel like she is probably going to wait until the criminal matter is all settled up.
Let's buttonhole that. You say you are going to move forward to challenge the guilty ruling today. This gentleman, Robert Latham, says Rules 27A and 27B of the Utah Rules of Criminal Procedure provide an automatic stay of fines after an appeal is filed for a hearing de novo in district court. 28 days to appeal, Curtis. Can you break this down in people terms? I know you say you're going to,
yes.
I don't know if yes. Just tell us what's going to happen in your mind.
Well, to break down what this Robert person said, what I believe it to mean is that I don't owe anything and nothing's on my record, and I have 28 days to appeal it if I want to. And I believe that Mary, my lawyer, who is also Paul's lawyer in the Smithfield trial, has already filed that stuff. She filed it today while she was in Beaver. But yeah, we're definitely not going to roll over on this one.
So, okay, so you're moving forward. You've got your civil lawsuit, which you're a plaintiff in. You've just been found guilty.
I'm actually not a plaintiff in I was removed as a plaintiff from the civil matter because I'm involved in a criminal matter that involves the same incident. I believe it's called the Younger abstention. So if and when the criminal matter is done, whether I'm found guilty or not, I can then be added back on to the civil matter as a plaintiff, which I think is another reason why the civil matter is not going to be move forward in the process until the criminal matter is done.
So this could be going on for years.
Jane, let me add one thing to that is, yeah, Curtis is right that he was removed from the civil case and can be brought back into it. But the judge in the federal case in the, in the preliminary injunction phase denied the defense's motion to basically put everything on pause. The judge did not do that. The judge said that the civil case for all the remaining plaintiffs can go forward. Now, whether that happens or not, I don't know. I don't know if she's going to do that. But this judge has already ruled that this officer violated Curtis's First Amendment rights, and and I think it's fair to suggest that he also violated all the activists' rights who were forced to leave when they were doing nothing more than exercising their constitutional rights, at least on the sidewalk out around the park. The judge did not make a ruling with regard to whether the park itself is a public park generally or on that specific day. She refused to decide that issue because she didn't feel she needed to, but she emphatically said that the sidewalk surrounding the park where Curtis is seen on video is absolutely public property, and that this officer did violate Curtis's First Amendment rights.
So just to recap and review, because it's a complicated case, even you were found guilty of disorderly conduct and trespass today. You're going to move forward to challenge that, but it's not necessarily going to be with a jury trial because of technical things, because of the nature of the charges being misdemeanors, yada, yada, yada. But either way, even if it goes before another judge, you're going to proceed. And then only when that is ultimately decided will the civil case, where the law enforcement community that did all these things that we've seen on tape, that's when they're going to face justice in a civil court. Is that the bottom line there?
That's what I think, yeah. And so the next step in the criminal matter is a district court judge, which is actually at the same place where I just was today in Beaver, and just with the judges higher up the ranks. And then if we don't get a ruling we like there, we can appeal that, and then it would go to Salt Lake City to an appellate court.
And, I want to just wrap up by saying that Wayne Shung says sometimes losing is a better way to establish case law, because you can then appeal. And then when the appeal if it comes down in your favor, that establishes case law more than just winning in court. Can we get that in people's terms, Nathan?
Yeah, I mean, I think a good example might be, if we look at Wayne and Paul's case in the original Smithfield trial, a jury found them not guilty, but that's not binding on any future prosecution, or it doesn't provide case law for the future. The only way that happens is if they were convicted and then on appeal, which is not before a jury, there are appellate judges who then look to see if there was an error in the law and how the law was applied to the trial. And if an appellate court said in simple terms, this is not a burglary. This is not a larceny. This is actually, a rescue. There was no intent to commit a burglary. There was no intent to commit a larceny. That's actually the way a right to rescue, unless it's done through legislation, can happen through the courts. It can't happen through a jury trial. We want acquittals because we don't want to see our friends go to, we don't want to see them go to jail. We like the fact that jurors in these rural communities, when they hear the evidence, when they hear about the animal cruelty, are just not, they haven't been able to find, they haven't chosen to find activists guilty. There's great victory in that, and we can celebrate that. But Wayne is right that if to change the law, it has to happen either through legislation or an appellate court, and only a conviction can make that happen.
I don't want to belabor this. Now, J. Robert Latham, I don't know if he's a lawyer, but I think he might be. He says if Beaver County goes with a misdemeanor charge, Curtis Vollmar will be entitled to a jury trial. A Utah district judge will not get that wrong. So can you analyze that for a second, Curtis? They're saying that both of these charges are misdemeanors, right? Trespass and disorderly conduct. So
I'm not sure here. I think that one of them is just like a civil infraction, which is even lower than a misdemeanor. I'm not sure about the other one.
The trespass is a B misdemeanor, and the disorderly conduct is just a infraction. And because of the B misdemeanor, I believe and I did not know this until earlier today, Rule 17 says that Curtis would be entitled to a jury trial upon request. It wouldn't be automatic, but he can demand one, and he will get it.
And I heard something about, well, if they don't give him a jail sentence, then they can't do that either. But I don't know. This is very arcane part of the law. But you're hoping for a jury trial, it would sound like. So we'll see if that happens, and we'll bring it to you live here on Unchained TV. Let's get final thoughts from everybody. This has been a fascinating panel. I hope those watching will share out this video and also download the Unchained TV app. I'll tell you more about that in a second. But Mick Davudian, what is your take? Oh my gosh, wait a second. We've got Cassie King who's joined us. Or did she go away just now? I just saw her this second. Darn. Yeah, well, somebody text her to come back, and then we'll get her thoughts. What are your thoughts, Mick Davudian?
Well, I mean, I'm very confused in my head, honestly. This case being misdemeanor and an infraction, in my mind, is a lot more confusing than, for example, this Smithfield trial. We had a lot more information about it. And I do want to throw this back to Nathan again. I have a bit of a confusion, Nathan. You said something about the judge earlier, something to the effect that whether you were talking about the judge or someone else, they haven't even gone to law school. Can you clarify that? Because that's a really confusing point.
Yeah, I mean, it's unheard of to me. I only know that from what I have heard from others and read online, that this judge who made a ruling today didn't go to law school. Apparently, it's not a requirement under Utah law. I don't know that for sure, but yeah.
Oh, great. I can be a judge in Utah. I love it. Okay.
But my understanding is that at the next step, the judge will be an attorney.
And that's part of the reason you get this de novo appeal is because if they call it justice court, isn't, I don't know. It just seems unofficial. I mean, you have a judge that didn't even go to law school. Like, it just, what is going on?
Well, it doesn't seem like a legal ruling. It just seems like an opinion then.
Well, can I say one thing on that also? I'm sorry, I don't mean to use up too much time.
Go for it.
I think it might sound like on the surface, well, no harm, no foul, he gets another try. But I guarantee you there are a lot of people, particularly people who do not have the financial means, who will accept the conviction and not go to the next step because they can't afford it. And I'll bet you that happens in the majority of cases. That won't happen here, fortunately. But for a lot of people, I'll bet it is not. This is the last resort, and that's really unfortunate.
Nathan, my mind is blown. I just don't understand how somebody without a law degree can pass a legal judgment on a citizen. It's just, I don't get it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, First Amendment law is extremely complicated, and to hear that this judge may, reach a verdict within 5 seconds is really something else.
Well, Deb Thompson, and can't confirm this, but Deb Thompson saying in Arizona, justices of the peace don't have to be attorneys. I don't know. I mean, this doesn't make any sense to me. If it weren't so serious, if there weren't animals suffering, it would be funny. But the truth is, this all gets back to what's happening to the animals. That's what ultimately Curtis wanted to talk about. This is an image from the Smithfield farm where there are dead piglets next to a mother pig. I don't want to belabor it. This is one of the piglets taken out with blood on the snout by Wayne Shung. These are pig gestation crates. This is a serious issue. And that's why the idea that you can't talk about this is so enraging to me, to watch that video where this cop says, well, the only thing that counts is jobs. Jobs have been used to justify cruelty to humans for eons. You can look back at any major social justice movement, and the word jobs is always thrown about to oppress people. And jobs are always lost when it comes, for example, to innovation. And we've been hearing that with AI, artificial intelligence. Okay, but then people point out new jobs are created. I mean, when the car came along, horse carriage drivers were put out of business. But the argument is, well, you can't come here to this town and talk about cars because don't you realize these carriage horse drivers don't want you here? I mean, imagine if a police officer said that. I mean, this is like, my mind is absolutely blown by this entire, just the dialogue. The fact that he said that you were selling a product, your product and your company, it betrays a real lack of understanding. We have Cassie King with us. Apologies, I didn't see you there in the green room, the virtual green room. Can you bring us? We're all still like marveling in horror over, oh my gosh, the question is free speech dead in America? Take it away. What is your take on all this?
I'm shocked. I'm shocked that it happened so quickly, that the judge barely seemed to deliberate. But I think that tells you that he probably had his mind made up very early on, just given the demographics of the county and his allegiance to the mayor who previously worked for Smithfield for many years, to the police who are at the beck and call of Smithfield, and to the Church of Latter-day Saints as well, which is so integrated with the authorities in rural Beaver. But I'm glad it's Curtis, because Curtis handles these setbacks well. He's the first person convicted in DXC twice. I believe he's probably made that point earlier, but I'm glad that Curtis is getting the message out there. And I also think that op-ed, if y'all saw Curtis's op-ed that was published 2 days ago in Utah's largest newspaper, the Salt Lake Tribune, that was asking if free speech is dead in rural Utah, the fact that they ran with that title, the fact that the media is asking that question, I think shows you that a lot of people, even in Utah, are very concerned about what's happening with free speech here in this case, and are willing to ask that bold question and to challenge what's going on. So I'm press pitching this now, and I'm hoping that we get more attention on this ridiculous and dangerous outcome that just disregards the facts of what happened and gives a lot of power to these corporations that have so much to hide. And hopefully we can bring more attention to that and enshrine more protections for free speech for future activists who are challenging Smithfield and other corporations.
You're muted, Jane.
You're muted, Jane.
My first accidental mute of the day. Okay, sorry about that. But we were talking about how, this case, as important as animal rights is, and it affects human health, it affects animal suffering, it affects climate change, it affects all sorts of things: deforestation, habitat destruction, human world hunger, human disease, blah, blah, blah. But this also goes beyond the issue of animal rights to the issue of free speech. Is there any effort to get the ACLU involved? We talked about the fact that the ACLU often represents organizations with whom they disagree vehemently over issues and content, but they still defend their right to speak freely because that's what our nation is founded on, the notion of free speech. Have you been able, or would you consider reaching out to ACLU? Because I think that might broaden the conversation and get people who are not necessarily concerned about animals, unfortunately, to look at this.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jane. And we have reached out to some of our contacts at the ACLU, and we are hopefully getting support from them in some of our cases. We actually reach out to them a lot because we have activists facing just massive over response from government in multiple cases, and we could use a lot of their support. So I do see that being successful, but I'm not sure if it will be in this case. We have to see the higher ups at the ACLU, what case they can get behind us on. But we're giving them options and we're asking them for their help for sure.
I mean, I would think, my gosh, Ellen Dent, this would be right up their alley. I mean, this is, to me, unprecedented because it's also caught on tape. It's one thing to say they were being disorderly. Just this weekend, we had the vegan Earth Day March. And it just struck me because we had clips that we were playing from all around the world. And you guys are so, and listen, nobody was being disorderly. Nobody was acting out. Nobody was doing anything wrong. But just in terms of visually, if you want to look at what protests can look like, okay, check this out. Okay, so if you would come to town, mostly naked, wearing pasties, and with this kind of large group with smoke flares and blah, 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 and we're at this Pioneer Day, well, maybe they still couldn't say that what you're doing is wrong or violent, but you were the polar opposite of that. This young lady here, and I'm sorry, I don't remember your name because you joined, but you were speaking in a subdued fashion to us. Curtis, I know him. I had a table with him at a conference where he's not a hothead. He's a cool, calm, soft-spoken guy. I mean, it doesn't seem like there's a leg to stand on with the disorderly conduct. In other words, there are times where you could make a case, but you're both very soft-spoken and you were speaking in that manner on the videotape. You never got riled up. When he's like, don't you realize you're not wanted and blah, 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 you're like, not a good look. I mean, you didn't display any anger or anything. Can I get your reaction to that, Curtis?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I could have been a little more calm with him in the moment, but yeah, I mean, I was just in shock, when they came over to me, and then when he started trying to insert himself in conversations, trying to tell people these are the people that are trying to shut down Smithfield. I mean, that could have incited violence against me. He's telling people in the community, presumably people that may work there or may have worked there or have lost your jobs, that, hey, look, this guy right here, he's the guy that's responsible for you losing your job. Like, that is horrible. That is a horrible place to put somebody. And he probably didn't even realize that, to be honest. I'm not going to give him that much credit. I don't even think he realized that. There's another incident. I actually got into an outreach conversation. I don't believe it's in the audit video, but about 5 minutes after that initial altercation, I got into an outreach conversation with a woman on the sidewalk while Woolsey was trying to stop it. I got into this conversation. He's like trying to insert himself. And finally, Woolsey gives up, and me and this woman talked to each other. She ended up not agreeing with me all the way, but we shook hands, and she said, you know, it's your right to be here. You have a God-given right to be here. But Woolsey, at the beginning of it, he said, these are the people that he's with, those people that went in and broke into the farm. And she said, in response to that, well, I don't want to talk to him if that's the case. So like you can see that like reputational damage happened in real time from this guy's speech. And it's just mind-blowing that this person still has their position to my knowledge, and that these charges were even brought. I mean, I don't know what else to say about all of this, other than the fact that I'm happy that you're having this show. I'm happy that they put my op-ed out there. I'm happy that it's going to continue. I'm happy that there's probably going to be more press, and that people are paying attention to this.
Yes, and Robert Latham, who seems to be the most educated about certain details here. I don't know if he's an attorney in Utah, but he says that that you should reach out to FIRE, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression. I'm just passing it along. These are comments from viewers. So yes, I want to get final thoughts. This is obviously not over. The next development, the next court case, Unchained TV will be there bringing you the very latest and expert analysis. But let's go around and do a round robin, starting with Carla Cabral of DXE.
Well, I just want to say first, I'm so proud to be part of Direct Action Everywhere, and the fact that one of our core values is to be nonviolent, and that comes into play in situations like this. That we do have training and an understanding of what it means to act in a nonviolent manner. That's not passive, but Curtis showed exemplary restraint, I felt, in dealing with an egregious situation. I agree that the conduct by the officers was not just unconstitutional, but egregious in the way that they actively went in and prevented Curtis from being able to exercise his free speech rights. And I'm not happy that Curtis was found guilty, but I also agree with the idea that this will bring more attention, and if it goes higher up, this could actually work in our favor and bring more attentions to the plight of the animals. So
yeah, you never know. It's not the end game. So final thoughts, Ellen Dent.
I think maybe you should thank them for these charges, because it is helping get this word out there, and it is showing the corruption in this county to even bring these charges against you in the first place, when their officers were on tape harassing you and the other activists. So I think it's just completely ludicrous, and it would be laughable. But this is a very serious situation. And, I'm just going to say, hang in there. You're really doing an incredible service for our whole community by bringing this issue to light and showing the deep levels of corruption when a county is literally in bed with a corporation that runs them from behind the scenes, or literally right in front of your face. So not even so much behind the scenes, but they're telling you that they're angry with you because you shut down Smithfield in their town. And I think it's completely laughable that they bring up the jobs. Not that I don't empathize with these people losing their jobs, but slaughterhouse workers are the most victimized workers in the whole workforce. So shed light on that too. You're damn near doing them a favor by shutting this down and helping them find other jobs so they will not be victims, along with the animals that are being slaughtered in these horrible places and being killed in these horrible farms. So thank you, Curtis. Thank you for doing this. Thank you all for being brave. Just keep fighting, fight for yourself, fight for them. And, I wish you good luck.
Wow. Well said, Ellen Dent. All right, Nathan Semmel, final thought.
Jane, you said earlier that watching that video, you can't help but find, there's a funny element to it. Something, there was one part in it that I also kind of found funny, which was, when Curtis was approached, he says to the officer something along the lines of, "This is not a good look." And I think he says it a couple of times. And it was almost like he was giving the officer, and Curtis, you can tell me if I'm wrong here, but it was almost like he was giving the officer a chance to stop because it was so blatant. His unconstitutional behavior was so blatant that it was shocking. And I think Curtis actually seemed to sort of resort a little bit to sort of a dry humor, which is, this is a really bad look, man. You got to stop right now. And he didn't. And what he did was he made decisions based upon the content of speech. And that has been proven time and time again to be unconstitutional. And whether it's speaking in this case about animals, whether it's protests over Black Lives Matter, whether it's the suffragist movement, you cannot cite people, you cannot approach people, and you cannot jail people because of the content of their speech. And that part of it is not at all funny. And that is what happened here.
Yeah. And today it's Curtis. Tomorrow it could be somebody speaking about an issue that they care about, that has nothing to do with this issue. And so that's what's scary about it. I think, as we've been saying, sometimes when things go to higher courts, it can set precedent. I mean, I think this case, if it turns out that everybody's slanted and this doesn't have the outcome that you initially anticipate, if the appeals take it all the way even to the Supreme Court, but then you have people on the Supreme Court who have unsavory ties to business, which has been in a scandal in the news right now as we speak. And, listening to some books on history, when societies and civilizations start to decline, it's when corruption overtakes the institutions of government. And then people fail to have confidence in those institutions. So we're at a real turning point right now as a society. We've got to clean up our act and try to make sure that these institutions are not essentially co-opted completely by industry. This is the essential problem. Corporations are considered persons in some respects under the law, but animals aren't. It's outrageous. All right, let's move on. Mick Davutian, final thought.
Well, I mean, Wayne has said a few times that losses are expected. We on the heels of the two big wins recently, including Smithfield and the most recent one. I guess it was bound to happen. In some ways, I guess I'm glad it was this one, not for Curtis, obviously, but for a couple of reasons. There's no fear that Curtis is going to go to prison. Number one, that's critically important. But the fact that this is a free speech case, I think, is going to be really, really beneficial to the cause of DXC, what DXC is doing for the animals and in general for animal rights. I think this is a real positive. And just to say, maybe Curtis can give the details so make sure everyone knows about it. Many folks involved with DXC are going on a tour to discuss open rescue, and we're going to have Curtis and a couple of others in Los Angeles this weekend. So I say, let's go celebrate. We're going to have a party on Sunday.
All right. And my apologies. The young lady with the glasses, not me, you. Thank you. I'll get your name next time. Apologies. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Allie, and thanks for having this, Jane. And yeah, my last thought on this is just they're trying to silence us, trying to intimidate us into not talking about these issues, but the truth is on our side, and these systems of exploitation are going to be uncovered. And in Merced and Utah, jurors were finding that it is right for us to be going in and rescuing animals and talking about what these corporations are trying to hide. And so, yeah, they may try to intimidate us, they may try to silence us, but we're here doing the right thing, and we're going to continue to do that.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at these images, and we're not showing too many of them right now, they're so disturbing. They're the stuff of nightmares. And, it's really ultimately speciesism, in my opinion. What essentially this officer is saying is what you believe is important is not important. The only thing that is important in my world, in my mind, is this community's jobs as I see the jobs. In other words, his worldview is what matters, and your worldview doesn't matter. And you have no right to bring a different worldview into what he's looking at as kind of a closed community. But there are no closed communities. We live in a global village. We have something called the internet. It's not like if you're in a village as you were in maybe prehistoric times, that's all there is. No, we are in a global village, and we all have access to this information. And the question is, can we have dialogues about it? Dialectics, argument and counter argument to reach a higher understanding of the given subject matter. That's what you were doing. You were going in there to have conversations with people, to maybe say, hey, you think that this is good for you, but let me tell you how it's not good for you and how it's hurting you. And maybe you'll change your perspective. And it sounds like some of the people actually open their mind to that. And he's saying, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to change anybody's perspective in my town. Presumptive ownership of a place that doesn't belong to him. I mean, there's so many things that occur to me that I find so shocking about that video. We're almost wrapped up. I always forget if everybody's spoken. Let's go to Cassie for final thoughts. And thank you for joining us. I know you're very busy today.
Thank you for covering, and thank you to the panelists who come out time and time again. We have a lot of trials, I know, so I really appreciate it from everyone. And one thing that strikes me that's just so ironic is that the officers are saying repeatedly that they're worried about the activists' safety. They're saying, don't go to the horse races, don't protest there. People are drinking, and you'll definitely get killed if you go there. You need to stop. You're creating discord in the community. You're going to endanger yourselves, cause violence. And you know how you can tell that that's not really their concern? They're the ones trying to incite anger in the public, not Curtis, not Allie, not the people who are giving out leaflets. They're the ones saying, these are the people that are costing you your jobs. These are the people who are responsible for Smithfield closing down or massively downsizing. If they're so worried about activist safety, if they're so worried about the discord and the intensity that might unravel here, then they should be trying to de-escalate, which is something that we train people on in DXE, how to take a heightened situation and calm it down and bring people down and keep things cool. But that's not what the police are doing. They're doing the exact opposite. So there's a lot of contradictions in the footage, but that's one that I wanted to point out that shows you they don't have a cohesive story, and they're not concerned about the activist safety, and they're absolutely just concerned about the content of the speech, which is problematic and not a just arrest. So this is not the end. We're going to keep fighting, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to keep doing that.
Very well said. I have a very quick question. Nathan, could you get a change of venue on a civil case? Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
I think you mean criminal. Or so
No, on a civil case. Like, in other words, yes, you want to get a fair audience, whether it's a judge, a jury. So there's also a civil case. Well, if we're still in this same biosphere where everybody is kind of like, we don't care about the rules of law, we don't care what police officers are supposed to do. I mean, is there any way to take that civil case and move it to a place where you'd get a fairer reception?
I don't practice civil law, so I don't want to speak out of turn, but I will say this. From reviewing the decision on the preliminary injunction, it's pretty apparent that this is a fair judge. So I don't think there would necessarily be that need. Plus, district courts federal courts usually cover very large areas. They're not localized like you see in city and state court. So you would have a federal district court that would, the lower court that would still cover probably a lot of counties. You'd have the appellate court, which would be the circuit court, which would cover probably, in the Midwest or in the West, you're talking about probably several states. So I don't think there really would ever be a need to change venue on the civil case, but particularly when I see how fair the judge was in her ruling in this case, I don't think there'll be a need for it.
All right. Well, I don't know. The way things are unfolding in this community, it sounds like that, who knows what kind of pressure could be exerted. I mean, I'm just not saying that is going to happen, but I would be worried about it. All right. I think we've gotten everybody, but of course, save the best for last. Curtis, your final thoughts.
I don't think Carla has went. Has Carla, did you get skipped?
Is that yours?
I went already, and I also wanted to. I agree with Ellen completely, and with Jane about the idea that jobs are a BS thing to go on about. The fact that jobs come and go. Lots of industries over the years have come and gone. Businesses fold all the time, and to use animal rights activists as a reason for losing jobs when there are tons of other ways that jobs are lost, I think that's out of bounds. I just wanted to add that in as well. Go, Curtis, go.
Your turn, Curtis.
Yeah. So just the jobs thing, I got to ask this by the St. George News guy. And I just think it's so trite, the whole jobs argument. And, if El Chapo Jr. moves into Beaver County and sets up a cocaine ring and offers anybody to come in and deal drugs for a six-figure income, are we going to say, oh, that's great, six-figure incomes, go work for El Chapo? That's awesome. And there's and nothing else matters. Six-figure income, come here. That's absurd. To not take into any other external factors. But these corporations like Smithfield Foods, they can make other products. They can shift into other products. We already see this with Tyson. Tyson now has a, plant-based or vegan faux meat line, right? Like, why can't Smithfield do that? And why can't they hire people to make these products? So the jobs thing is just absurd. And, we're being scapegoated here. We're being targeted. And this whole case is way more than animal rights, and it impacts everybody, and it should scare anybody that cares about the Constitution and the First Amendment. And then just on a personal level, I was a little bit down immediately following the decision, but I'm just so grateful for the community, both in person that I have and the friends and the relationships that I've built. For the last week, I've been on this tour with Elmira and Michelle, and we've been driving around, talking with local communities, activist communities, about the right to rescue and about the animal liberation conference. Like, we were just in Boise, Idaho, like a few days ago, and we did a disruption at a Whole Foods with 12 people, and like 8 of them, it was their first protest or action of anything of that sort, and they were all amped up, and it was awesome. So yeah, I guess if anyone's watching this, I would just encourage you to get involved in whatever way you can. I know that not everybody can kind of put themselves in precarious situations where they may be risking arrest. And for the record, this whole incident with me here was not one of those situations. I was not I did not feel like there was any risk of arrest here. But yeah, back to my original point, I would just encourage everybody to get involved in whatever way they can, and share these stories and speak up for animals. And thanks, Jane, for having this panel, and thanks for the support from everyone here.
Well, thank you, Curtis. And, you're so articulate, all of you. I so appreciate you coming on. I know it's a big investment of time. Everybody is very busy. I would like to say that I think this is the reason we started Unchained TV, is that really important stories like this are being ignored by mainstream media. Yes, let's have a shout out to St. George News, who provided those still photos for us, and who have also covered this somewhat fairly. And I'll play just a little clip here. I believe this was the gentleman from St. George News who interviewed you right after the verdict. This is very short.
The evidence that came out today, there was almost nothing about the disorderly conduct. The evidence that came out against the trespass was not a whole lot of it. And so it's clear to me that the forces that be, there's other forces at work.
So you feel like things stacked against you a little bit here?
Yeah, definitely. I feel that this company has a lot of power over this town.
So yeah, that was great. St. George News rocks. But where's all the other media? This should be on the front page of the New York Times. This should be on the front page of the Washington Post. And that's why we do what we do here at Unchained TV. I was in mainstream media for 38 years. Okay. And so I know that, look at the advertisers, meat, dairy, and pharmaceuticals, if you want to know why they're not all over these stories, which is why we started our global streaming network, 100% free streaming network. I urge you to download it. You can literally download it on your phone. You can watch it on your TV set, Amazon Fire Stick, Roku. If you have a Roku device, if you have an Apple TV device, just put in one word, Unchained TV, and we're about to go on all Samsung smart TVs. So we literally have a potential audience of 1/3 of the world's population, because 3 billion people and counting are people who own streaming devices. So we're trying to do an end run around the mainstream media blackout on these issues, because we need to get the word out. The clock is ticking. Animal agriculture is destroying our planet. It is there's very good arguments to be made. Some are saying it is the leading cause of greenhouse gas emissions. It is certainly the leading cause of deforestation, habitat destruction, wildlife extinction, and human world hunger, human disease, preventable lifestyle disease. So support us. Download Unchained TV. Share, as somebody said here, Deb Thompson. And we certainly hope to continue following the incredible work of Direct Action Everywhere. Keep it right here. Thank you, fantastic panel. See you next time.